I now call this regular meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Director Hayes and Director Gordon are attending virtually, and they are on, correct?
I thought I saw Director Hayes.
Okay. All right. The first thing, okay, perfect. Thank you. They are attending virtually. Everyone else is here in person. I just wanted to note we are pulling the superintendent's evaluation from the agenda tonight, and it will be rescheduled. With that, would everyone please rise for the national anthem or the Pledge of Allegiance? You can do that too. I'm ready. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Director Klein-Jerome, would you please read the board priorities?
The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impact of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you, Director Klein-Jerome. Director Potts, would you please read the mission and vision statements?
Mission statement. Enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Vision statement. Education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Potts. There are no presentations tonight. We will move on to student board reports. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you. And Ms. Alex Yazak, we pick on you first every time, so we're going to move right down. Sarah, if you wouldn't mind starting this off, much appreciated.
Okay, so at West recently, Jada Daly and Nia Smith received 4th and 5th place in their division at the sanctioned girls state wrestling meet. On Saturday, we also had 4 band members perform at the SEBA Honor Band, which is a huge honor to be accepted into. Moving a little bit from West, one of our feeder schools, Bluegrass Elementary, Miss Scott, the principal, and the DCSD Diversity and Equity team are working with the state's CPAs, which is a group of accountants who have reached out to bigger districts like Davenport in ways to educate students about different career paths and professions. They're working by giving out kid-friendly insight into accounting through the book, When I Grow Up, I Want to Be an Accountant, where words like accountants are brothers and sisters, work with sports and government, etc. And it's just a really great way for elementary level to connect and learn more about mathematics if they're interested in that. Do you want me to pass it that way or back to Bree?
Just go that way.
Okay.
She can go last.
Okay.
So at Davenport Central, we recently had our NHS induction on January 12th, where 72 new and existing NHS members were inducted. Last year, the NHS members of the class of 2022 weren't able to be inducted because of COVID, so this gave an opportunity for them to do that. So now the total number of NHS members at Central is 110 students. Tomorrow, we actually have an NHS event where we're going to support the boys swim team on their senior night against Clinton High School. The show choir premiere also happened January 15th. Blue Vibrations and Central Singers Incorporated had their first performance of the season, where their families, friends, and even around 30 Central show choir alums were present at the show. On January 20th and 21st, the Drama Club held their student-directed play called Not So Grim Fairy Tales. And also, math teachers Mrs. Rao and Mr. Taylor are offering students help with their ACT math prep for the ACT happening on March 8th, which is a good resource for our students.
No worries.
Over at North, we have some exciting things going on. So our student body has had a pretty calm start to the new quarter, which is always a good sign. Both our girls and boys basketball teams are having a great season, and we are looking forward to seeing how the rest of their seasons play out. There are also some more interesting updates from the arts perspective. So we also had our show choir premiere. So our prep and our varsity show choirs both performed for the first time this season. And then our varsity show choir, Northside Establishment, was able to compete at the West Branch High School Invitational this last Saturday, where they were awarded Best Band, Best Choreography, and the prestigious Grand Champions Award, which means that they won the entire competition, which is obviously a great honor to be awarded. And that hasn't happened over at North for over 6 years. So it's very exciting for all of us over at North Choir, and we're excited to have a good season. So. There you go.
Yeah, I'm last. So something I forgot to mention last time is that our life skills in our Falcon Friends group, which is where like students just work together to build friendships, we had a holiday party with North and Central life skill departments at West in the gymnasium. So that was a lot of fun. That happened before winter break. And then Sarah and I went to our show choir opening night on January 15th on Saturday. And I would like to say it was awesome to see all of our show choirs, our women's choir, the men's choir, all of that, to see all the hard work they've done over the school year so far. It was really beautiful and amazing to see how much talent we have going on at West. Something really cool that also happened is our vocational automotive department, our photography department, and our graphic design department all worked together to create a calendar, and they sold calendar ads, all for the common goal of to raise money for families at Jackson Elementary. They completed 30-hour service learning project that donated over $1,000 to those families at Jackson. This whole project really gave students a time to give back to the community and just really give back. Stepping back to our feeder schools, at SMART, Mr. Jones and a few other DCSD faculty have been working together over the past year with community health care to provide free vaccines and athletic physicals to all the students there. They've reached over 100 families just in the first half of this school year, so it reaches a lot of people, and it really it allows people to have access to the health care that they need, and it gets rid of that transportation barrier. That's something that would be really cool to see in all of our other schools, and they've just done an awesome job doing that.
Thank you very much. That concludes our student board reports.
Thank you, student board members. We appreciate hearing from you all. All right, board reports. Are there any board reports? Director Hayes, do you have any board reports?
I would like to defer mine to if you can explain it, and if Director Karen Klein Jerome could do the condolence. Were you able to get that? Okay.
I believe she's talking about the one you shared with us. I'm assuming that's what she's talking about.
Okay.
You
Do you have something you want to say first, and then I'll...
Director Gordon, do you have any board reports?
I just wanted to share that last week I got to go to the Central High choral concert, and it was astounding. I am blown away at how talented our high school choirs are, especially with having the last 2 years with such short and unusual years. They really have made great strides this year, and it was really awesome to hear. And they had a really good turnout. And that's all I have to share tonight.
Thank you, Director Gordon. Director Klein Jerome.
Sorry, I just had a brain freeze there for a minute. Yes, we'd like to offer our condolences to Joe Scott. He worked for our district. It was an amazing amount. He started teaching in 1958. He retired from Davenport. He came back to Davenport and worked an additional 18 years. And the trees planted at West High School and North High School are mostly because of Joe Scott. He would get students interested and come in to plant trees on Saturdays. He taught foreign language, mostly French. And when I was looking at comments, when his obituary was posted, a lot of students in my class, way before you guys were around, that's what they remembered also was the tree planting and what a wonderful person he was. So we offer our condolences on Joe Scott.
Thank you, Director Klein Jerome. Director Potts.
I had attended the Facilities Committee meeting at Monroe School the week before last, and the library was full of citizens and committed people. And the commitment that these folks are making on this enterprise is significant. A whole year's worth of work. And I expressed to them our commitment as a board to not, reassuring them that we don't have a plan in the can that we're going to whip out, that we're not going to act on anything that's in their purview until we receive their report. And I think they were appreciative of that, because there's always some skepticism on the part of any group you pull together to develop something that they wonder, okay, so once we're done with this, what happens? So, but it was very productive, very productive. And the lady that owns Rudy's provided refreshments for everybody, and that started the evening off. I almost want to say it started the evening off with the gas.
Director Potts, when is the expectation that they will have a report for us?
This spring.
This spring, okay.
Mhm.
Any other board reports? The only thing I have, and the superintendent will probably cover in the superintendent report, but myself and Vice President Hayes went with the superintendent to the state board meeting, which was a very good meeting. And I'll let the superintendent talk more about that later. Seeing no more reports.
I'll cover it then too.
We'll move on to communications. Open forum. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak, please fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The form is available in hard copy for in-person attendees or on the school board page of the district's website for those who want to participate virtually. Virtual participants must email their request to Brenda T. at tbren@davenportschools.org by 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. Iowa Open Meetings laws prohibit action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president may set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. For open forum tonight, we have three, and we'll do 3 minutes apiece. Up first, we have Penny Duda. No? Okay. Up next, we have Carla Pitson. Did I say that right?
Carla Pitson, 1538 Wildlife Drive, Bluegrass.
Can you push the button on your microphone?
Carla Pitson, 1538 Wildlife Drive, Bluegrass. This information is from the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. Early in the COVID-19 pandemic, the WHO, the CDC, and NIH's Dr. Anthony Fauci discouraged wearing masks as not useful for non-healthcare workers. Now they recommend wearing cloth face coverings in public settings where other social distancing measures are hard to do. The recommendation was published without a single scientific paper or other information provided to support that cloth masks actually provide any respiratory protection. The cloth that serves as the filtration for the mask is meant to trap particles being breathed in and out, but it also serves as a barrier to air movement because it forces the air to the path of least resistance, resulting in the aerosols going in and out at the sides of the mask. The first randomized controlled trial of cloth masks in healthcare workers in Australia found that penetration of cloth masks by particles was 97%. The virus may survive on the surface of the face masks. Self-contamination through repeated use and improper doffing is possible. A contaminated cloth mask may transfer pathogen from the mask to the bare hands of the wearer. Moisture retention, reuse of cloth masks, and poor filtration may result in increased risk of infection. A study of 4 patients in July 2020 in South Korea, known patients infected with SARS-CoV-2 wore masks and coughed into a petri dish. Quote, both surgical and cotton masks seem to be ineffective in preventing the dissemination of SARS-CoV-2 from the coughs of patients with COVID-19 to the environment and external mask surface, end quote. Reported by dentists, wearing masks increases dryness, which leads to decrease in saliva. It is the saliva that fights bacteria. Result is decaying teeth, receding gum lines, and seriously sour breath. Gum disease or periodontal disease will eventually lead to strokes and increased risk of heart attacks, end quote.
Thank you, Ms. Pitson. Maddie Pitson. You're a minor. You don't have to worry about giving us your address.
I came to speak today because I want to mention some reasons why masks are ineffective and unnecessary. First off, if a student sneezes, the larger droplets linger in the air a shorter time period than the small particles, so the small particles have a higher chance of being collected by other objects as well as other people. If they are wearing a mask, the gaps that are in the mask will divide the larger droplets into even smaller droplets, causing the particles to linger in the air even longer. Also, I wanted to mention that washing your hands is better than forcing us to wear masks, yet in Davenport West High School, their sinks did not work at one point, and the sink didn't work in one of the bathrooms in my school either. Basically, my point is you are making us do something that does not work, but the things that might work you do not have. Also, masks are just annoying, uncomfortable, itchy, and hurt the back of your ears, and in some cases make it hard to breathe. Even my teachers don't like masks. Please just end this meaningless mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pitson. All right, we will move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the consent agenda as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Potts. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Gordon?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. May I have a motion on approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the following resolution. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the treasurer, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of January 5th, 2022 to January 18th, 2022.
Second.
Seconded by Director Poston. Hang on one second. The motion's been made. The motion's been made by Director Beck, seconded by Director Poston. Is there any discussion on approval of bills? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Gordon,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Superintendent report.
Thank you, President Goza. Last Thursday, President Goza and Vice President Hayes and myself were in Des Moines for the state school board meeting, where we presented our Davenport plan as usual in their usual routine and cadence, where we discussed the visit that the 4 state school board members had with Davenport Community School District, and reviewed a couple of highlights from previous months. The comments that were made, there was a completely different tone, as many of you have watched that meeting, and they were much more complimentary of the things that are occurring, and the report that we turn in is considerably greener than it has been in the past, and so the comments were very positive. One of the highlights that we had that I thought President Goza was going to share in the board report is that the Iowa Association of School Boards asked Dan to facilitate one of the statewide president's meetings, which I think is a great honor and also a testament to this board and the direction that we are going. We have worked really hard with IASB to get things going in the right direction, and our continued efforts were a direct result of Dan being asked to participate in that, and that is exactly what we said we were going to do and the things that were on our sheets. And so the overall feelings in the room and comments were very positive, and one of the school board members that was present in our district had stated the conversations are drastically different than they were a year ago, and that's what I want to relay to our community, is that we are heading in the right direction, and we are working our plan. And so that concludes Superintendent's report for today.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Committee reports. You guys got anything for LZAC or anything? You haven't had a meeting yet?
No, the policy committee meets this week, so.
What about LZAC?
LCAC didn't meet this month. We'll meet next month, so there's nothing to report there.
Okay. For legislative advocacy, neither Director Posture nor myself were on the meeting about the day at the day with legislators on President's Day for the students. But you and Brenda were on that meeting. You want to share that?
Absolutely. So this morning we met with Margaret Buckton to plan out the day on the Hill. And unfortunately, with COVID and the restrictions that are placed on the Capitol. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Where our students take the bus trip to the Capitol. So we're suggesting an alternate meeting where we meet in the morning before our local legislators have to go up to the Hill and prepare our students for questions. And so we'll do a very similar format that we did with our legislators, to where we'll have a breakfast. We will invite them to come in. Margaret Buckton will pre-meet with our government teachers and then see what the interest is. And Margaret Buckton is working to see if the governor can come on shortly after our legislators are interacting with our students. And then that will give them plenty of time to get to the Hill for their 1 o'clock session that day. So right now we are working to put together logistics for that. We felt it important, instead of canceling it, we decided to try and find an alternate way to keep that day, because that's really important to us and our students to advocate, to interact with their legislators. And our legislators in this area, they care deeply about our students and about the programming inside of our schools, as evident in our most recent legislative lunches.
Thank you for filling us in on that. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No.
I already had you give the Long Range Facilities Plan Committee point, so. LZAC, I think we covered all of them. No Finance Committee meeting report.
That was canceled because of the meeting in Des Moines. So I'm not sure if we're going to try to squeeze one in here or go to next month. But I do have a board request in just for some information. It's some information that I was going to ask or discuss at our Finance Committee meeting. But it's something I think all the board should be aware of, and I think we need to address it.
Thank you, Director Poston. Seeing no other committee reports, we will move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 10.01?
Mr. President,
Director Potts.
I move the board approve the administration's recommendation for the purchase of a 1.5-year contract extension for our E5 Envision Math contract for our online component to our K5 core math production. Envision 2.0 in the amount of $102,600.
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Director Kleindrum. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Kleindrum?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Gordon?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.02?
Mr. President,
Director Poston?
I move the board authorize the district's administration to submit a request to the School Budget Review Committee for funding related to FY22 statewide voluntary preschool program increased enrollment in the amount of $97,564.50 as part of the district's response to the impact of COVID-19 pandemic.
Second.
Do you need that part read too?
Mhm.
You need to read that. The January.
No.
Oh, okay. The motion's been made by Director Poston, seconded by Director Kleindrum. Is there any discussion? Director Beck?
I know this didn't follow our typical pattern of discussing before it came up for a vote, so just so that people know, could I ask the superintendent to give us sort of a brief overview of what we're asking for here?
Absolutely. One of our overarching goals is preschool in this district, and any additional funding that we can use to move forward the initiatives that we have. We know that preschool is something that works in our district. The state is responding as fast as they can from the federal government, and so when things come at them very quickly, it comes at us very quickly, and we felt that this was an absolute something that we needed to put on right away due to the timing of it, and the impacts to our budget are nothing, and so getting it on here, moving it forward is just a simple formality for us to have access to the funds. Kevin and Lisa, is there anything that you'd like to add to at state.
The main thing I would like to add is this is a unilateral request that all districts have to submit timely in the next.
Good point.
Sometime in the first week of February, it's due. That's why this is the only meeting we have between now and then without doing a special call to give you an answer to your question. And it's unique because the dollars come with it. It's not just authority.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Gordon.
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. On to discussion items. Up first will be subject 11.01, update on special ed compensatory education hours. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
As a part of our regular update for special education, we feel it important that the board have a regular update on our compensatory education in the minutes and where we are. So Susan's with us tonight to give us an overview. So thank you for being with us today, Susan.
You bet. All right. So I know you have control over this, Brenda. Do you mind going to the next slide? There we go. So in August, I presented on the update for phase 1, and at that time we had one student left from that very first round of citations that we hadn't finished our compensatory ed on. That was a high school student who had not been accessing his compensatory ed. We have since closed that one out, and we are now done with all of our phase 1 citations. So if you go to the next slide, we can see that, just so everybody can see where. Right there, we're 100% done with phase 1. All right, if we'll go to the next one. So phase 2 was the second round of citations. That's also when the state came in to do their look at our accreditation, the entire district. And during that phase 2 visit, they found more citations for special education. Those revolved around alternate assessment, our students who are on alternate assessment, those in our most significant programs, and preschool. So phase 2 alternate assessment, in August, we still had 6 students. There was 43 students originally that were cited or that were found that were owed compensatory ed. In August, we had closed out 37 of those. We had 6 students that were still receiving comp ed, and we had 743 hours left to provide. We have a couple of students under that citation who were awarded several hours of compensatory ed. In fact, several hundred hours. So if you will scroll down to the January, oops, scroll back up a little, right there. Thank you. We still have 6 students who are currently receiving compensatory ed. We are now down to 632 hours, so we're down about 100 and some hours. Again, there are a couple of students within that mix that we will be providing compensatory ed on for at least the next 2 to 3 years. We're not going to close them out for 2 or 3 more years because they have several hours owed them. But we'll have a couple that we probably will close out yet this year. But we've made good progress this year or actually within the last 3 or 4 months, we've made good progress on those hours. So feel real good about that. All right. Next one, we had early childhood. So in August, we had a total of 19 students who had been determined owed compensatory ed. We had closed out 15 of those students. 4 were receiving compensatory ed, and we still had 279 hours that we owed. And if we go down now to the right there, right, yep. Nope, not there. Go down a little bit up. Nope. It's all right, we got to scroll back up. Keep going. One more slide up. And thank you, right there. So as of last Thursday, we were down to 3 students that we owe. We had closed out one more student, and we are down to 239 hours. I don't know what happened there. But we're down to 239 hours. And we have one more student that I think we will be able to close out within the next few months. And again, we had a couple of students there that we owed several, lots of hours to. And when we originally had the citation, then COVID hit and we had parents who had asked that we hold off providing the hours. So we just started providing hours on one of those students. All right? But we're making good progress. So then stop there. In August, I provided you additional data that we hadn't provided to you before on other students that over the last couple of years we have been doing fidelity checks, right? We've been following up regularly, consistently. We have special education facilitators that are assigned to our buildings, and they on a regular basis, along with their AEA counterparts in the buildings, do fidelity checks over IEPs to look for continued or sustained compliance. And there are also some other situations as we follow up, or sometimes other incidences that we become aware of. And when we come across situations of noncompliance that we think are pretty significant, IEP teams meet to determine if we owe compensatory ed. And in August, there were 59 students as of that time that IEP teams had determined we owed compensatory ed, and for a total of 1,500 or so plus hours. And at that time, we still owed about 632 hours, and we had 6 students that we were providing those services to. We had a couple of students within those 6 that had several hundred hours. So again, going to be a few years before we get those done. And one of those students, the parents would only allow us to provide the services in the summer. So again, it's going to be several summers before we get those hours done. And if you'll scroll down. And since that time, we are now up to 64 students. So we have found a few other incidences since August. We have also closed out a few more cases. And it increased to 2,200 plus hours. However, we've also provided several hours, so we're at, again, about 677 hours that we still owe. And that is where we are with compensatory ed, so I'll open it up for any questions that you guys may have.
Director Beck.
So just want to make sure that, first of all, it's good to hear that we've got one set closed out and the circle's green now. I appreciate you giving us this other non-compliance update. The way I'm interpreting it is that we are continuing to check up on our own processes, and where we see mistakes or things falling through the cracks, we are following up on those. And so it's not an outside entity telling us that we need to do this work. It's us doing it on our own and making sure that we're following the appropriate procedures and policies. And so I appreciate that, because one of the first things that we all asked when this initially happened was, how are we going to know that these changes are going to stay in place? And so this is reassuring. And it's not always pretty to say we found some more, but the fact that we are doing the work to make sure that we are following through properly, I appreciate that. And thank you for sharing it with us.
Director Poston.
You mentioned a number of students where you owe several hundred hours. Did that happen because of how they were, what category they were put in, or how did that many hours get accumulated for an individual?
So honestly, that was determined by the IEP team, which included the parents, the special education teacher, general ed teacher, could have been AEA staff along with and the building principal. And they looked at a variety of data points, and from their perspective, when they looked at all of that, they determined they looked at student progress, lack of progress, multiple factors. They're the ones that determined that that's what they felt that the student was owed. Another IEP team might have come up with a different set of hours, but we go with whatever the IEP team determined.
So, I mean, were there students where they were not involved at all? That they weren't identified, and so they were not receiving any help as far as the IEP? Was it just like a student was totally missed?
What you mean? Is that why they got that many hours?
Yes.
No, all of the students had IEP services. It just really depended upon the situation and what the noncompliance involved. And so it was that. If it was a major mistake, maybe, I don't know. That depended on the IEP team and what they determined. And it would be very hard for me to, I know what the circumstances were. It's hard for me to go into that detail without providing identifiable information for that student, and I wouldn't want to do that. But good question, yeah.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Could you explain the alternative assessment? We just didn't provide an alternative assessment for these students. Is that why we were cited, or?
So that was actually a continuation of our placement decision. And so students on alternative assessment are students with significant cognitive disabilities, meaning that we put them in a self-contained classroom where they were provided instruction on alternate core, right? Not on the essential elements, not on Iowa core. And so they weren't in our general ed classroom actually the determination was they should never have been in those classrooms, and therefore we didn't provide them instruction. They shouldn't have been identified for alternate assessment. That's the.
Okay, thanks.
That was the incorrect placement, yeah.
Director Gordon, do you have any questions?
I'm still thinking. I'm not positive that I don't, but I'm not sure that I have one right at the second.
Okay. Director Hayes, do you have any questions?
I do have just one. Thank you for that report, Susan. You had mentioned the one student that was only available for summer. Can you give an approximate breakdown on like how many hours a day or a week is that student afforded to get all those hours made up?
So that student comes in the summer for around 6 hours a day, 4 days a week. I mean, that's been offered 4 days a week, 6 hours a day for about 5 weeks in each summer.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Director Gordon, did you come up with any questions?
No, I think I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Susan, for coming to give us an update on this. We greatly appreciate it. And we will move on to subject 11.02, benefits discussion.
So I'm very proud of the committee that was led by Jamie Weinsroll and Kevin Posicani about the review of our benefits. It's something that's been long overdue. And so they brought together a committee of teachers, paras, everybody from our organization, and even included a retired teacher on there. And so tonight we are going to share for your discussion the results of that committee. So Jamie, if you and Kevin would update us on the progress that team has made. I'm extremely proud of the work that you've done to build consensus, to really show the state of where we are with our benefits, and so both of you should be commended because you've done a wonderful job leading that committee, and it's much appreciated. So go ahead and walk us through the benefits presentation. Thank you.
Sure. Brenda, are you able to get that up? As TJ mentioned, in the fall of this past year, we formed an insurance committee and it was represented, sorry, from each group, employee group within the district. So like TJ mentioned, anywhere from custodians, maintenance, retirees, administrators, secretaries, our food service, everyone was a part of this conversation. So our first meeting that we held, we brought in our benefits consultant, True North, and we really dug into our current plan, our expenses.
I got a rare! Mommy, got a rare!
Mute.
If whoever's online, if you could please mute.
So in that meeting, we really dove into what our insurance fund looked like. And then also as part of that was we had just as we came out of negotiations last year. And when we look at a total package for our employees, that includes the insurance costs. And as we dug into our current plan and going back to some of the previous behaviors, like insurance holidays that had been taken and that money coming out of our fund, we're not able, with what we're spending on our insurance with our current providers, to be in a good financial, fiscally responsible place with our insurance fund at a very fast clip without significantly raising the rates for our employees. And it's not only, it's the rates for the district as well as the employees. So after that meeting, it was, okay, well, now what are our options? And so True North went back and did some digging and looked at Wellmark. So True North works with other school districts in the state of Iowa, and Iowa City had transitioned to Wellmark, so a large school district, and had a lot of success, and we're starting to see some cost savings. So we started down that path. And that was something that the committee was interested in doing. So our final meeting, what I'm presenting on, is looking at the plan comparisons between Wellmark and United Healthcare, and the final slide will show the dollars and cents. So leading up to it, if we were to change from UMR to Wellmark, what would stay the same? We would keep our deductibles the same, our out-of-pocket max, co-pays, co-insurance. So we're not looking at changing our current plan design. Something that would change under Wellmark, the chiropractor and physical therapist network is wider, which has been somewhat of a problem for our members through UMR. And then also Wellmark is known to process claims much faster than our current provider, which is a huge customer service factor for our members as you wait to get your claims processed and not knowing how much you're going to owe your physician or what they're going to pay. And then also, as we'll see in our last slide, our greater discounts with Wellmark. So the punchline is there's a cost savings that can be seen by both the district and the employees. So the next question we had was, okay, if we were to move to Wellmark, what does that do for our current employees and our members of our plan? So what True North did was Wellmark completed a disruption analysis. And what they do is they go through all of the claims to see how much disruption there would be by providers. So when we look up there, you can see that 98.22% of our members or the claims would not have any disruption. So that's according to our consultants, some of the best numbers they've seen. So it's showing if we move, there's not going to be a lot of negative impact for our members on our plan. We can go to the next one. So that was really to make sure that we weren't causing undue hardship with large groups of employees. Part of the change would be switching our prescription provider from Elixir to Med1. And the changes really have zero impact to the members themselves. You still have your insurance card and your copays will be the same. But behind the scenes, the discounts are better than what we currently have. So alone, the Med1 could offer $20,000 to $30,000 savings by just utilizing their network. And then there's also network optimization. So there's a lot of employee education about using lower cost pharmacies. So some of your big box pharmacies They're on every corner, and it's the ease of use. You go there to get your prescriptions, and we all that are on the plan pay the same amount. Behind the scenes, those larger big box pharmacies are charging our plan a lot more. They kind of equate it to some mob mentality, organized crime in the pharmaceutical industry. So really, with the Med One, it's more of a transparent. We can see what we're paying and what the actual costs are, whereas right now it's a shell game. And then there's also a copay assistance program and allows the plan to capture available manufacturer assistance dollars. So if we're able to capture that, that goes back into our plan and we're not spending those excess dollars. Go to the next slide, Brenda. The one thing that the committee got really excited about are there's some additional prescription plan changes that we can make to save even more money, but at this time we decided to hold off and not do too much change all at one time. So really what it comes down to is managing our drug utilization. So it's been a pretty free, we've had a pretty free plan as far as prescriptions, and it's not to take away from anything, but there's like low value drugs. A clinical team goes through and identifies those generics first instead of always getting your new up and coming prescriptions. If generics come out and they're available, there's that type. And then some looking at your types of prescriptions that are being written by your doctors, just doing some more consumer driven type decisions. And those were all things everyone was excited to do. The insurance committee is still intact, so as we make decisions on how to move forward, we can always get back together and look at evaluating even more cost savings. Next slide. All right, Brenda, if you could click on that link. And if you will go back to the tab that says comparison, it actually consolidates the without and with changes. So this is what True North did for us. There's a section on if we didn't make any changes, what the plan would look like, as well as insurance increases to the district and our employees. And then there's down below a section, if we do make the changes, what that does. What you'll be able to see is our trust balance, our excess funding, and our trust balance. It's going to take us longer to become more fiscally responsible while we're all paying more to get there. And if you look at for the 2023 year, if we don't make any changes, then we're looking at a 6% increase on insurance. If you scroll down, Brenda. Right, that's good. So here, what you'll be able to see is that our trust balance and our excess funding, we're able to get there a bit faster without paying as much as we are with UMR. And you can see that we still have to have an increase because our fund, like I mentioned, some of the past behaviors have negatively impacted that fund. So we would still be looking at a 4% increase in insurance, even with the change. And then Brenda, if you click on the proposed changes in impact, you can actually see where the savings comes from. So you'll see for the comparison between Wellmark and UMR, under the administrative piece, Wellmark is more expensive, but you'll see that like telemedicine, something that our employees have been asking for, is included in that administrative fee. The stop loss is actually cheaper. And then where you're really going to see the savings is in the billed claims. So you can see our discount with Wellmark, it would be 53%, whereas our discount with UMR is 51.2. And then over on the right, you would see our savings with medical is almost $1.1 million, and our savings with the prescription change would be $363. And when you take out the additional administrative fees, what we come up to is a savings of $875,000. Now that's not just for 1 year, that's year after year. So it's a long-term cost savings. And so basically, in advance of asking permission at the next, to be voted on at the next board meeting, is the entire group on the committee had come to consensus to move forward with recommending a change to Wellmark over UMR. And if the board decided to move forward with that, we would be able to roll that out on April 1st.
You want our input now?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, well, you didn't say, and that concludes my presentation.
Oh, sorry.
Is there any discussion? Director Gordon, do you have anything?
Yeah, I have a question. So this shows that the telemedicine is included for the Wellmark. So what does that mean exactly? Just that it's provided as an option, or that there's not a copay? Or I guess I just don't understand the 91 or 97 cent difference or whatever.
Sure. So the 97 cents under UMR is a per employee per month charge that in order to have that benefit, whereas under Wellmark, that benefit is provided under that administrative cost. So we wouldn't have to pay an additional price. So there was a difference in the administrative fee, and that is some of the savings. They look higher, or UMR looks lower, but we're also paying an additional price to just be able to utilize telemedicine.
Okay. My next thing isn't necessarily so much a question, just as a comment. Due to the attendance policy that recently changed, I've heard from several staff members who are concerned about the increased need for doctor visits with the new attendance policy, with 1 day instead of 3 day, needing doctor notes and whatnot. And so I guess if we're concerned about saving money on insurance, if our staff is going to have to go more frequently to a doctor, whereas before they may have stayed home, wouldn't that ultimately raise our insurance costs regardless of what we're using? I guess that was a question, but do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding about what went out to the district, and I've made some clarifications with the building secretaries that handle attendance. We're not expecting, and I even mentioned it in the principals meetings, is that we're not expecting that every time someone is sick that they go to the doctor. But if we get into a situation where it's you're in some cases over 3 days, it can become an FMLA situation. And then or there's some issues that we're trying to address through resending out the attendance expectations that are within the contract, is that if you're starting to abuse it or starting to see patterns, then we can ask for.
You're walking the line, because we're not talking about attendance and stuff. We were talking about benefits. So just make sure you keep it about benefits. I don't
Sure.
want to get off topic.
Yes, the more you use the benefit, the more it's going to cost.
Thank you.
Hold on. Director Hayes, did you have anything?
Just wanting clarification. Jamie, thank you so much for the in-depth study on this. You had mentioned that the plan design would not change, only the PT and the Cairo. Is that correct?
Right, and that's not even changing. So there's no plan design changed. The request for proposal was apples to apples. One of the additional benefits by moving to Wellmark is they have a bigger network, a wider network of providers for physical therapy and chiropractors. So it's just kind of an extra perk.
Thank you.
Director Beck, you had a question?
Yeah, just thinking of, I'm, as somebody whose employer recently went through a change in health insurance, and I know, so for some people, for instance, you know, there may be a disagreement over they've been on a particular medication for years and years and years, and the insurance says, no, now this is the equivalent or something like that. How easy is it to talk to somebody at Wellmark, I guess would be my concern if there is a disagreement. Because I feel like sometimes with large insurance companies, there can be sort of a one size fits all mentality and everyone has to do the same thing. But there are some situations where it's in the best interest of the patient to listen to what they've been doing for a long period of time, right? So I guess my question would be, how easy is it to talk to somebody and figure those kinds of things out?
Sure. So right now, when you talk about prescriptions, it's going to a new prescription provider. So they're not a large Wellmark right now. And those other things that you talked about, that I showed, are things that we can look into further. So right now, we're not going in heavy handed saying that we're going to start evaluating everybody's prescription. That is something that down the road, looking at our larger, expensive prescriptions, that we can start digging into, but that's not anything that's part of this at this time.
Okay. So basically, if somebody is concerned right now, it's a matter of they should be getting the same thing that they're getting now. It may come from if it's a prescription, it may come from a different location, but it should be the same thing.
It would be coming from the same place. I mean, you still go to your same, we want to do education to have our members utilize lower cost pharmacies because that saves everybody more money. But you would be getting your prescription from your same provider.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other discussion? Director Potts.
Did I hear you correctly when you said that the members of this insurance committee are completely on board with this proposal to shift to the Wellmark?
Yeah, so we did a consensus activity during our last meeting and got the entire group consensus to bring this to the finance committee and then the school board.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Student board members, I forgot to call on you on the last discussion item. I'm sure you really want to talk about benefits and insurance and stuff, but I just didn't want you all to feel left out.
We're good. We're good. We're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Gordon, did you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Director Hayes, did you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Jamie, when will you be bringing this to us?
At the next board meeting.
Does any board member have any other information they would like or need to feel comfortable voting on this at the next meeting? Thank you, Jamie and Kevin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We will move on to the next subject, 11.03.
The next two, actually,
the next two, I
if you don't mind, fall in Gary Sloat's realm. And so Gary's going to explain the next two to us. And Lisa, please feel free to jump in on anything that you hear or share.
Hello.
Thank you, Gary.
Pleasure to be here. Right now we're talking about the E-rate WAN connection, and this is an annual thing that we do, but we do it for different terms of contract period. We found that over the last 20 years we've been doing this, the economies of the internet and data circuit market have fluctuated in such a way that it doesn't make sense to make a really long contract because the prices usually go down about 50% while the amount of bandwidth we get almost doubles. And so we found that for the amount of work it takes to get it done, the amount of change it does to our district at that time period, a 3-year period is an ideal window to try and figure out what the best pricing for the district is. And so that's what we're asking for at this time. In the past, bandwidth has always been a concern, and as we've grown as a district, technology and everything, we've tried to step up all the things that we need to do to make sure that we've got ample amounts of opportunity for our kids and their network and all the business that we have to do. In that regard, I guess I can tell you that we're in a very, very comfortable place right now. We've never had more equipment on the network than we've ever had in history, and we're still really not utilizing everything that we've got out there. But the capacity is there. Should things in the market change, we need to get more. We've got ample to hit the peaks and things that might come at us. And then we also have the ability to change our contract as needed with the vendors that we've had in the past. So I expect that to happen again with this. E-rate is a wonderful resource for us, given our home economic survey and the finances in the city. We get about 80% of our costs covered by the E-rate program, and that allows us to pay the remaining 20%. So it's given us an opportunity to really take advantage of what we can do, and we've got a network that's really first rate going on right now. Given that, there is really no reason to change what we're doing right now as far as the amount of bandwidth we're asking for. I do expect that our cost for this will go down with these contracts, but the amount of bandwidth we're asking for is going to stay stable. Some of the bigger changes we are doing this year with the bandwidth that we're asking for is instead of going directly to the Mississippi Bend AEA for our internet, we will be going to Des Moines, where the AEA has taken up residency in a facility called IP Pathways. And so we will have a 5 gigabyte pipe going between Davenport and Des Moines, just like the AEA does. And that's going to make some of the things at the AEA work better, and we'll have some opportunities that we didn't have before. So I think it's a win-win proposition to align ourselves in this way. I expect that our cost will be in the neighborhood of $60,000 a year, and that's our 20%. With the vendor we've had to date, Mediacom has been willing to partner with us, and they put an SPI amendment to their contract so that they actually go to the government and collect these funds from the government, and they do that on an annual basis so that we don't have to pay the monthly fees. So it's a benefit for us to have that kind of a situation set up. We'll be continuing to try and do that. Mediacom has been a vendor for quite a while. There's some competition out there. It's going to be an interesting year to see who might come to the table with better opportunities for us, and we're always open to that. So do you have any questions?
Director Hayes, do you have any questions? Director Gordon, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Any other questions? This is going to come to the next board meeting. Any other information any of y'all need before voting on this next? I think every time Gary comes up here, it's golden when he presents it. So
He dazzles you with data.
that's it.
Thank you.
11.04.
Do you want to go ahead while you're up here?
All right. I didn't know the protocol for that. We're also asking for the opportunity to seek bids on LIS security server system. We have a very robust camera system throughout the district, and we have had, and it's almost, it's been a little over 5 years exactly now that we've had that in place in some capacity. At that time, that's about the time that half of our systems been wearing out, so we've been working our best to get a refresh established, and I think we're at that point now. The pandemic and the change in staff and stuff kind of threw us off our timing on that a little bit, but at this point we'd like to replace 18 of the 30 servers that we have in the district with new ones. We expect that to come to about $125,000 is our estimated cost. These are the servers that actually store the content that the cameras create so they can be reviewed, and we have the opportunity to get at them. I think we're doing a really good job of helping the district move forward with all the kinds of things we need the video system for, and I think this is a prudent expenditure at this point in time. Are there any questions on that?
Director Beck.
So just to clarify, this is PEPAL money that we would be spending on this. And I note in the memo, you say this will allow us to set a 5-year cycle. So basically, we can kind of continually replace and upgrade as necessary without a huge expense at once, unless there's some sort of.
The ideal cycle would be about 25% of your stock every year, and so you'd be on a 4-year to 5-year recycle. We do that with our desktops. We do that with our Chromebooks. So we're trying to get it all in line.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Director Gordon, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Director Hayes?
No, sir.
Thank you. Student board members, you got anything?
No?
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. All right, we will move on to subject 11.05, the monthly physical reports.
Thank you very much. As you heard Director Poston state, we have had our cadence and our routine disrupted. We were unable to meet as a finance committee, but we felt it important that we would bring this forward. So we feel as if the cadence of presenting the data to the school board is important. We will be making up that finance committee as we have very important things to continue to discuss with our board finance. Some of the upcoming financial calendars were some of the things that we were going to discuss in that meeting. And also we are bringing forward our updated ESSER budgets to the finance committee to review, and today the agenda committee has scheduled that because I know that's something that the finance committee has been very interested in hearing exactly the status of our ESSER dollars. So those will be the big topics of our finance committee as we move forward. And so for our monthly financials today, one thing that I will say that has been a very positive step in the right direction is our HR department and our finance team have been partnering together, and Jamie Weinsroll has created a census report that has become very valuable to us. And in the last month or so, we've really been utilizing that to really double check ourselves with the things that are occurring inside of our district. You know, the Forecast 5 has really changed the way we review our data and our line item budgets and things of that nature. But Forecast 5 is only as good as the data that we're putting into it. And so right now we're really working hard to double check coming into this very important season of checking our budgets, double checking our staffing levels, and moving into contract season. So, Kevin, with that being said, please walk us. Kent, Karen, do you have anything to add to anything, comments? Excuse me, choking on my lifesaver here. Anything before Kevin gets into his reports? Thank you. Okay, Kevin, go ahead and share our monthly financials. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, TJ. Yeah, as he said, we got a little disruption, so we tried to go via email to hit the high points with the committee with Kent and Karen, and our agenda will be loaded going forward. If you can, we can start with the key measures report, Brenda. On this report, I highlighted some of the stuff in yellow. You have to remember, first of all, this is through the month of December. And so you kind of think, well, this is 6 months. This is a halfway point. Keep in mind, halfway point, calendar-wise, we're not halfway point through some of the salaries that are less than 12-month employees because they started in September, October. So this is a short 6 months. That said, we made a statement last month about why, I'll get to that to the next one in a little bit, but on the key measures, you'll see that our year-to-date expenditures are sitting at 42%. That's why I say we're on a short year. That is right in line with where we've been historically. In fact, it's trending down. I know 1% doesn't sound like a lot, but going from 44 down to 43 to 42%. Our adjustments that we made last year at this time compared to this year at this time are starting to show. It takes a little bit of time when you have retirements in the prior fiscal year that happen in December and February. So you're not seeing those February retirements yet in a comparison, but you're starting to see some of the reductions that we made overall, and then going forward, you will start to see the other reductions. So you can see that our projected UAB for the year is sitting at 99.4%. Again, we are still trending in the right direction to where we need to keep that number under 100% so we can grow our unspent balance. That is a percent of expenditures to revenue. And as long as we maintain that at under 100%, we're going to be okay. Our solvency ratio is the third item. If you slide down just a little bit, Brenda, it shows it at 15.8%. Again, that's a little bit of a short year, so that 15.8%, where we want to be between 5 and 15%. It seems a little high, but it's going to come back a little bit when we get to our second 6 months of the year. And on the page 2 of that same document, I'm going to continue to repeat this because we're going to be coming to you with an amendment. You'll see 2 areas where way back in March when we were projecting what's going to happen this year, we have 2 of the 4 categories that it looks like we're projecting to overspend. We'll be coming back to you just like we did last year to do an amendment, and those numbers are still holding in the negative. That's okay. It doesn't change anything. We just have to be aware of it so that we can make an amendment when we're coming in April with our new budget. We'll make the amendment to the current budget at the same time. Any questions on the key measures?
Director Beck.
Yeah, and I know you've probably explained this before, but if we look at the first box, so the general fund unspent authorized budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me, that unspent authorized budget is sort of the number that we've been looking at for quite some time. The budget is in the negative, right? The red 3 million there, but the projected is in the positive.
Yes.
Can you just kind of, for somebody who may be listening for the first time, explain why we're not panicking?
Yep. It's a great question. I'll probably repeat it when we get to the next slide. Okay. One of the things that's unique about this fiscal year is we have some latent receipts that we have not received. We did not receive as many of the federal funds through the state in the month of December. We're getting those in January. In fact, we have received them in January to the tune of about $2.9 million. That's what part of the communication we're going to have in our finance committees, because there's some unusual and unique things happening that ultimately wipes out that negative amount. So it looks bad on paper, and I think that's a great question, and you'll see that on the next slide, and I'll just repeat that on the next slide if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Could you explain why the UAB ratio in November was 4.1 and now it's 0.8? Why the drop is, again, is it because of the revenue that we have not received?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And you'll be able to see that on the next slide when you compare to year to date with the other years.
Okay, and then explain to me, like, does the state have to wait for the federal government to send it, or has the federal government already sent it? Why are we getting late payments?
I don't know the exact reason why, but I know that they've had staffing issues just like we have. And there's also one of the things that happens, especially with their ESSER funds. The federal government is moving the bar and asking the state for additional information that they've asked from us prior, but they're changing the ask from the federal government. So the state is working as hard as they can to try and get the information from districts to get back to the feds so that the dollars that flow back and forth, they've satisfied from the federal side of things.
So the money is still with the federal government. They haven't sent it to the state yet to disperse?
I believe so.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Director Gordon, did you have any questions?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Director Hayes, did you have any questions on what?
No, I don't. No.
Okay.
Brenda, if you'll go to the other report. So again, this report shows our through the month of December for this year compared to the prior years. The big difference, the big variance I want to point out on the revenue side, as soon as this comes up. Okay, can you all see that? Oh, there we go. You'll see that our federal revenues are sitting at $3.5 million. In FY 2021, it was at $4.5 million. Remember I mentioned there's about $2.9 million, and I have a list of about 5 different federal grants that we have that were typically paid in December from the first quarter of the year, so July, August, September time period, that we're just getting them in January, and those numbers are not reflected in here. It's very unusual and unique for this to happen. So showing that we're at 41% of our revenue is low, but that's going to correct itself come January. But you can see trend-wise, we're pretty steady on those receipts other than that anomaly. The other thing to point out when you flip to the expenditure side, a large portion of that $2.9 million is ESSER funds. And ESSER funds in this situation is on a reimbursement basis. You ask, do they have the money? Or they have to ask for it. We don't have those funds. We have to ask for it, so it's on a reimbursement basis. So while the dollars in ESSER that we've paid, that we've expended, we haven't received it. So that's just to get us back to even. So that's important to note. But also on the expenditure side, when we're talking about staffing and all the work Jamie's doing with our staffing levels, you would expect our staffing salaries to be down. There's a couple of nuances to that. When we expend our salaries, we expend month to month. In fiscal year 21, our 9-month calendar, especially teachers, they're the heavy lifters of the expenditures. They started 10 days later in the fiscal year last year. As of December 31st, we are 8 days ahead of last year. So we have 8 days of the 185-day calendar is 4.3%. So we have 4.3% more of expenditures in our salaries compared to FY21. So even though we're showing about $800,000 more in expenditures, that's the main reason. We also had, if you remember, when school ended June 18th, 20th, in that range, when did we start summer school? We started summer school the last week of June, went all the way into July. When I asked payroll, show me the effect of what we paid for summer school this current fiscal year that we're in, we had over $400,000 of summer school expenditures. That number is in this $50 million amount for salaries. Typically, when you're out the first week of June, you wrap up summer school all the way through the end of June, and it's in that fiscal year. We spilled over into this fiscal year for summer school. So I know we had mentioned before that we're going to take a deeper dive in some of these numbers. That's the two biggest movers of that number. Conversely, what will happen too when we get into June, when we have to accrue salaries that we haven't paid but yet we've expended, you'll see a much smaller month of June this year compared to last year because we already have it expended. The good part of that, even with that, we're sitting at $1.4 million more in revenue than expenditures year to date, which is a tremendous trend that helps our solvency ratio. Remember, we talked solvency ratio is expenditures and revenue. That's trending in the right direction. That is pretty much the stuff on this.
I have a question about the federal dollars, and you said that, we haven't received that much, but if you go back and look, at this point, we had 11%, 19%, 9%, 29%. That is, last year was a huge, I'm assuming because of ESSER, and now we're at 16. So we're really tracking on the higher side of, if you don't look at last year, what should typically be minus ESSER dollars, our percentage? I mean, it seems like it should be more in that 15, 16% rate area. Would that be a correct assumption?
That's correct.
Okay.
You're exactly right. The ESSER funds were about 2.5 of that 2.9 million. So that 16% is fairly close.
To what it should be?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Director Poston?
So Kevin, I put in a board request and it's concerning ESSER dollars, and I know we were going to have that discussion at this past meeting. But I'd like to see, if it's not too much trouble, I'd like to see where the dollars have been spent, where and when the dollars been spent, and then the projections on where we're going to spend it, whether that's going to be more summer school, for example, or whatever, or whether that's got to come from staff as far as where those funds are going to go. But I think that's something we've got to keep on top of and have a plan in place so that we know where we spent them and where we're headed.
That's the exact presentation that's being prepared as we speak, that was intended to be, and we will have that ready to go at our next meeting.
Any other questions? Director Hayes?
No, I don't.
Director Gordon?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Student board members? Other than it costs a lot of money to run a school district, huh? Thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you for the presentation. Administrative reports.
None at this time.
Board requests. We have a few. First board request, Director Gordon made the request, date of request 1/24/22. Type of request, an agenda item. Requesting a discussion regarding how the district ensures district rule enforcement and compliance with consistency, especially during extracurricular activities. Reason for request. It has been brought to my attention that our mask wearing policy is not enforced with fidelity at all extracurriculars. For example, at a chorus concert last week, the director explained the importance of everyone in the building/PAC keeping mask over nose in order to comply with district rules, as well as ensure these concerts can continue. But at a basketball game at a different school later in the week, despite a displayed board with masks required at the entrance, almost no one wore a mask in the gym and no one was there to enforce it. I have seen and heard of this issue and others being dealt with differently depending on the building and / event. Why are you making this request? Honestly, my concern isn't so much with the mask issue as it is with the fidelity and enforcement of district rules in general. If our administrators and staff aren't enforcing this rule, how can we expect anyone to take seriously any district rules? How can we enact consequences for breaking some rules but not others? Some examples are hat wearing, dogs in buildings, etc. When would you like this info? As soon as possible. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, next board request. Name of board member making request. Director Poston, date of request 1/24/22. Item requested, agenda item. Description of request, would like to have a report on what we are or will be doing on truancy, absenteeism, dropout prevention. Why are you making this request? How can we improve our early literacy if kids are not in school? When would you like this? Next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Next board request, Director Poston, date of request 1/24/22. Item requested, agenda item. Description of request. Would like to have a discussion and vote on mask mandate. Why are you making this request? Having mask mandate has only hurt the district in open enrollment out. When would you like this? Next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
I think the diversity plan played a little bit of that too. Next board request. Name of board member making the request, Director Poston. Date of request, 1/24/22. Item requested, request for information. Description of request. Would like to have a report on where and when ESSER funds have been spent and balances that are left. A projection where money will be spent. Why are you making this request? We need to know where spending will benefit the most students. When would you like this request, or when would you like this? Next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
I think you're already working on the presentation for this. All right. Final request, unless anyone has any other ones. Name of board member making the request, Director Poston. Date of request, 1/24/22. Item requested, agenda item. Description of request. Would like to have a discussion on policy for selling assets of the school district. Why are you making this request? I have asked for this discussion on this topic for the last year and a half. When would you like this? Next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other board requests? All right, Director Potts' favorite part. Board reflections.
Oh, I thought I was going to say so moved.
But I'll start with Director Gordon.
I don't have anything to reflect today. Sorry, my brain is not fully here.
No problem. Director Hayes.
Not being able to see the student board members today, I was kind of excited with their excitement in giving their reports today. Everyone seemed to be so excited on the issues that they were taking place at their various schools. And also, I think it's great news that we're 100% through phase one with Susan's report. This has been a long time coming, and as we heard last week, that we were in a lot of green areas, which was a plus. But to hear that that's finally wrapped up, that was good news for me.
Thank you, Director Hayes. Director Beck.
For me, sorry, the first thing that stood out was the same as Director Hayes, was Susan Downs being able to tell us that we had closed out a number of citations from our original audit by the State Board of Education. And I think a second highlight of that report is that we're continuing to monitor that situation to make sure that we don't end up there again. And, you know, change doesn't mean anything if it's not sustainable. And so I think, to me, that's a real highlight, is that we're starting to see some of the results of all the work that we've been doing for the last few years now. So that would probably be my biggest one.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Director Beck. Director Poston.
Well, two things. Again, the special education update, and then I want to thank Kevin and Jamie for all the work that they put into on the benefits discussion. I don't think people realize how much time and effort that took, and so I thank you for that.
Thank you, Director Posh. And Director Klein, Jerome?
I appreciated in the student board reports that you also included feeder schools. That was nice to hear because it's not necessarily something that we're going to hear about. So I appreciate that you include them as well as your own schools. I like the fact that we are going after those funds for preschool because I think that's very important. The special ed progress is great, and that we are monitoring our own IEPs is also terrific. And I also want to commend the LIS department. I think they're on top of things. They're looking for ways to save us money, but also to stay up to date on the technology. So I think they're doing a good job.
Thank you, Director Klein, Jerome. Director Potts?
I had two things that kind of stick out. One, the benefits report, because it's an example of the culture that we're trying to establish where we include the people who are going to receive this benefit in developing the parameters of the benefit. And when you get this, a committee as broad as that says, yes, we recommend this to us, that's a relief in terms of our responsibility, because we've solicited input and are acting on it. Second thing I love hearing about the music programs at the schools, because the music programs in this district are one of our hallmarks. It's one of our flags that we need to fly. And I said it before, we don't herald our positives. We don't focus on the positive things that these kids in high school and to junior highs are doing. And it's crucial. It's crucial. If we're going to ultimately solve the enrollment issue.
Thank you, Director Potts. Student board members, we'll start at this end over here.
So I actually thought that the benefits discussion was really interesting. So just thank you for that. It's always interesting to learn about, especially being on this end and just hearing about everything going on. So I just thought that that was really beneficial for me, at least. And then hearing about the special education update, I thought was great. Obviously, I don't have very much prior experience with hearing about it, but I thought that the progress made was just great to learn about. And then I obviously love hearing about what the other schools are doing. We don't get enough interaction, I don't think. So being able to learn more about just the smaller things is always a pleasure of mine. So thank you.
I also just commend everyone that puts together those reports. It hurts my brain to look at, but I know that a lot of time was spent doing it, and I think that's really cool and awesome, and I know that it probably is a lot of hard work, and yeah.
I really appreciate that you guys are going over the benefits, because that shows me that you care about your employees and your district and the people that you are making decisions about. I think that it's great that you're looking at something that's so important like healthcare benefits. I think that's awesome, and I really appreciate the what's it called at the end where you do the papers, the board requests. I really appreciate when you guys do that, because for me it shows that you're like caring to inquire more about what's going on in your district, and it shows that you're looking deeper into our district and not just what we talk about here, what you would like to know for further times.
Thank you, student board members. We appreciate your input at the meetings. And if I ever forget you for a discussion item, just make sure you make a bunch of noise and wave your hand. Director Potts will let me know. Superintendent.
I would like to also echo our LIS department. We had some illnesses today. So along with their reports, We have Jeff and Justin inside the closet, and so big thank you to them. They had a crash tutorial on how to run our system. They got in there and they did it with no hiccups. So I think that says a lot about our employees in our district, because that is occurring all day long, every day, in every department, in every school. And we're making it happen for our kids, for our staff, for our community, and that's just one example of that happening. So thank you.
I wasn't expecting anyone to commend the LIS program, so that's what I was gonna do, and now
You should get an
multiple of you
opportunity
did
to
it.
go first sometimes too.
I guess, apparently. Stole my thunder. But Gary, you and your team, thank you all so much for always looking out for the district and trying to save us money and things like that. And without you and your department, clearly we wouldn't be able to live stream these meetings and let the public interact with us and all that. So we greatly appreciate it. Student board members, like I said, I greatly appreciate your all's input and your reports for what you got going on in the buildings. Not every one of us have kids or grandkids in the district, so we don't know what's going on all the time. So we do, and appreciate you staying all the way till the end of the meeting. And kudos to you. Student board members used to leave as soon as they gave their reports, so hopefully your teachers and principals are watching and you get a little extra credit or something.
I hope so.
You can go tell them that the board president and
I
the board
will.
said that, right?
I will definitely tell them that.
Just pull up the YouTube. You need me to get him to say it?
Yes, yes.
All right. Again, and I really appreciate the special ed update. It is nice to see where we're at with that stuff, and that we're constantly going back and rechecking on that to make sure that everybody's getting the compensatory education that they deserve. With that being said, Director Potts, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
If some meeting, I would like one person to say nay.
I was waiting for like the people at home to be like, oh, you guys are staying there.